Okay, everybody, here we go. It's the reading you've all been waiting for. Don't mean to big it up too much, Mr. Wagar, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Here's Drew Wagar reading from, in fact, first of all, let's get our hands together for Drew Wagar again, guys. Yes. Good luck, have a great one. Here is your microphone, sir. And it's Drew reading from the third book in the Shadeward saga, Shadeward Exoneration. This is all planned. This is all planned. This is all atmosphere. This is all planned. Just the comedy of the convention. It's read from the phone, film with the phone. It's okay. Okay, we're going to try that again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Drew Wagar. And he's got his phone and everything, look. Here we are, sir.
There's one thing I've learned from this Fantasticon is don't rely on any technology whatsoever. There we go. Right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Dan. Much appreciated. So anyway, thank you for coming along to my third and final reading for Fantasticon. It's great to see so many of you about. This one is from my latest book, which obviously launches this weekend officially, Exoneration. You've probably guessed, but all four of these books will start with an E and end in shun. So there's a clue as to the title of the next book. As I've done with the other books and the readings I've talked about, just a little bit about the book before I start, because this is entirely my own world. Now, I love writing about Elite Dangerous, and I love writing about Lords of Midnight, but there is nothing quite like being able to write entirely your own story with no rules other than the ones that you enforce. And so what I did with the Shadeward saga is I built my own world. And those of you who know me well will know that I'm an astronomer. And I love the science of looking into the space and studying stars and so on and so forth. And what I wanted to do with the Shadeward saga is place it on a real possible world. So there's no magic physics here. There's no hyperspace. There's no lasers that you can see in the middle of space. There is no technology that isn't at least feasible. So everything in the Shadeward saga is, I believe, either possible or we can extrapolate from where we are today to say, yes, that could actually happen. So no warp drives, no force like in Star Wars. This is all stuff that is basically possible. And the world I've chosen is a world called Azurio, and it's in some ways quite like the Earth, in some ways it's not. The neat thing about Azurio is it's called tidally locked. It doesn't rotate compared to its star, which means one side is always in eternal sunlight, and one side's always in eternal dark, which means you have to have a new way of telling the time, and it doesn't have any seasons, and there's all sorts of other strange things about this world that the inhabitants are just trying to unlock. Here's another view of it. You can see it from the side here. You can see along the edge, the Terminator as it's called, it's frozen on one side completely. The side that doesn't get any sunlight is frozen so cold beyond any temperatures we experience on Earth. Well, the sun side is very, very hot in places, and there's a narrow band in between the two zones where you can actually live. And this is based on real physics. I actually have a colleague who does check the science for me and tells me what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do to keep it realistic as far as we understand how these things work. And here's another view kind of from the surface. Now, I've been able to simulate these things using some cool technology as well, so you can actually kind of land on the planet and go and have a look around, which is a cool thing for an author when you're doing this sort of stuff. It works really, really well. And so you've got a contrast between the cold and the hot and this narrow temperate zone where you can actually live and actually do things. But a scenery is all very well, but it's mostly much more about the scenario that you're kind of trying to pen. I really love some of the post-apocalyptic stories. So anybody who's seen things like, recent things like, The Day After Tomorrow or any of those kind of films, the feeling of impending doom and then what people do as a result of that impending doom. Now, this set of stories is set 2,000 or so years, although they don't call them years, after something has gone very, very badly wrong, but the survivors actually have forgotten what that problem was. It's so long ago. and it's kind of retracted into myth and legend. And as the story starts out, they're just beginning to uncover what actually kind of went wrong all that time ago. But it's so distant, they're struggling to even understand the issues involved. And it is science fiction. It's based on the fact that they were colonizing this planet a long, long time ago, but the knowledge of that technology has been lost in the depths of time. And the people who are left, there is technology on this planet, but the technology is so far buried below the collective understanding that it seems like magic. So there are magical things that happen. There are strange, unexplained forces at work. And some people think it's technology that's been lost. Other people think it's religious provenance and that God is smiling upon them and giving them a holy purpose. Others think it genuinely is magic. And they're all right, and they're all wrong. And Shadeward is the story of how these different peoples interact, and obviously what happens next. From the old to the young, you have a feudal society where people are discovering on the edge of unlocking technology that they don't really understand and don't know how it works. And so I'll give you a little bit of a reading from the second book, just to give you a bit of flavor. I will make sure my phone is in the right place at the right time. Here we go. Right way up. There we go. The machine was descending quickly. Mero could feel the ears popping and swallowed to relieve them. Research station in range. Arrival imminent, the female voice said. He leant forward, looking out of the windows of the flying machine. Ahead he could see a clearing in the Shadeward forest, and the facility came into view. His eyes were immediately drawn to a series of 4 devices set in the center of the clearing. They were, for all intents and purposes, huge bowls set upon a latticework of metal. And as they grew closer, Miro could see there was a spindle or a tower right in the middle of each bowl, acting as some kind of focal point. A series of low buildings were clustered between them, and the bowls were rusted and dilapidated, showing the signs of being exposed to the elements for countless rounds. One had collapsed on its mountings, bent and twisted, pieces of it cast upon the ground, and the others were oriented upwards, as if they were all aligned towards the same point in the sky. In front of the buildings was a flat area, and Maru could see it would serve as a landing space despite being overgrown. What is that? Maru watched as the glade whitened out beneath him. With a light thump, the flying machine touched down, the buildings in the nearest bowl a quarter of a mark in front of him. The engine's machines wound down, and the silence fell about him. He approached the buildings, walking first to the base of the nearest bowl, and up close he could see it was another great creation of metal, rusting now, locked in place for all eternity. He could see the bowl was oriented towards a point in the sky as if looking for something, forlornly awaiting what? The receipt of some kind of message from afar? They could see it point wherever they wished, but why at the sky? There's nothing up there. One of the buildings, the largest as far as he could tell, stood nearby. There was a doorway just ahead, but the door itself was gone, and he peered in over the threshold and peered inside. It was gloomy within, but he got the faint impression of a walled corridor lined with metal cabinets. So he stepped inside. The interior was forbidding, cabinets and row upon row of darkened controls lining the walls all the way down the corridor. Near the entrance, they were overgrown with weeds and grass, but further in, without the light, they were just covered with filth and muck. Maru tried a couple. None responded. One lever moved with a screech of unlubricated metal, the sound uncomfortably loud in the silence around him. He walked further in, flashing the lamp around to see where he was going. He came to a door. It too was covered with filth, but it was clear enough for him to make out a handle. And as he stepped up to it, he could make out a sign too. He rubbed at it, trying to decipher the text, "Control Room." So he pressed down on the handle. The door was stiff, but with little encouragement it opened. The room inside was better lit, light filtering through from dirty and stained windows on the roof and set in the wall. They were all stained with green, but there was enough light to see. Maru looked around him, seeing mundane and ordinary desks and chairs. They were made of a similar material to those they had found before. And among the desks were panels of glass. Maru reached forward to touch one, but nothing happened. On the opposite side of the room, he could see a large panel, and he walked across to inspect it. It too was badly tarnished, but he could just make out the text written across it. Main breaker, 16,000 volts. There was a large handle, upright, in a position marked as off. A quarter turn was another position marked on. He reached out, pulled the handle down. Cautiously he straightened, seeing one panel had flickered on. He walked back and looked at the display, wiping off the accumulated dust with the palm of his hand. Text had appeared on the glass panel, and it flickered a moment before becoming clear. A stream of information appeared. It was meaningless to Maru, but the last piece of text made a little sense. Last telemetry received. Vessel status report from Du Maurier. Life support systems critical. Hibernation mode engaged. Orbit stable. Maru scanned through the words. More of the ancients' confusing and peculiar text. What does it mean? A vessel called the Du Maurier? It was a strange name. What kind of ship? He looked up through the stained windows, looking out at the ancient bowl. He was convinced it was looking up into the sky. Up there somewhere? A ship that could travel above the sky? Maru blew out a breath through his lips. A round ago, he wouldn't even believed it was possible to fly at all. Was it too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that the ancients might have taken it further and gone beyond? He looked about him again. If only I knew how to ask. This place might tell me. There's a secret here, but what is it? And then there was a flicker of light, and ominous. A hand clenched into a fist, a bare arm, a face with bright blue eyes that stared at him, stared through him, wresting unwilling secrets from his very heart. He recoiled in terror, squirming to escape the predatory gaze of her eyes, but it was no avail. His mind was locked by hers. A trap. He could see her face in his mind's eye, cold and chill, but hauntingly beautiful. Blue eyes in a pale face, framed by a smooth fall of hair down one side. He felt his breathing quicken and his heart lurch at the thought of her. You are mine now, Maru of Amar. Mine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Give it up once more for the wonderful, the amazing 3 story reads in one convention, Drew Wagar, everyone. Listen to that. What a guy, to quote Ace Rimmer.